over, man. Game over. Welcome back to Ty and That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham. This is my good buddy Ty Franck, and we are here with a very special Ty and That Guy's episode coming straight to you with one of Ty and I's favorite movies, the greatest horror action movie of all time. What is it, Ty?
You're just a grunt. You don't get to make that kind of decision.
The greatest sequel of all time and the greatest horror action movie of all time.
Well, this is a military operation, and I believe Corporal Chatham is in authority here. It's James Cameron's masterpiece, the movie he still has yet to top. So that tells you how great it was right out of the gate. Aliens.
Wait, you don't think Titanic tops this?
I mean, it spent more money. You know, if you top by like spending more money, then sure, yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that I really love about this podcast is going back and watching these great movies and watching them, and I make an effort to watch them as if I'm watching it for the first time. Like I'm going to the theater and watching it for the first time and paying attention and not going over things and trying to learn the movie as if I'm seeing it for the first time. Sometimes, like another James Cameron, Terminator 2, I liked it a little less than I thought I would. This movie is just bad motherfucking ass from beginning to go, and I think I like it better now than I've ever liked it, and I just rewatched it, and I rewatched because I watched the director's cut for so many years. I was like, I want to go back to the original cut of the movie and watch that, and I think it's better. I mean, I think
so I like both because I like seeing this stuff in the longer cut.
Yeah.
But James Cameron clearly understood how to edit a movie, because if you watch the longer cut, there's fun stuff in there, but there are several moments that just kill the pace.
Yes.
There's several moments where the pace just dies. And when Cameron edited this for the theatrical cut, he edited it for pace. Everything is pace. Like, just keep the ball moving constantly and never let up. Like, when they go into the atmosphere processor, when the Marines go into the atmosphere processor and find out what happened to the colonists, from that moment on, he is standing on the gas pedal and he never lets up off of it.
And, you know, I think I've watched the director's cut so many times that I forgot how fast the pace flies. And I remember when I first saw the director's cut, I was like, well, that, you know, from an actor's perspective, I think from a director's perspective or producer or an editor, you probably don't need the stuff with Ripley's backstory with her daughter and her daughter dying and everything. But from an actor's, you're like, oh, yeah, I think you need that. You need to understand that void in her life and have that paternal connection to the girl. But watching it now, I don't think you need that. I think that her performance is so good. All of that is there. You might not know specifically what's missing in her life, but you do know that this girl is feeling a void and there's a special connection, and she is so motherly with her that she's obviously been a mother in her past. You know, I went back and I was reading Cameron's book, and I was reading the Alien 2 chapter. This is so interesting to me. He ended up, you know, Cameron was a massive Alien fan, and he went to the producers of Alien because they read Terminator and they were going to talk about some other jobs. As he's walking out, they said, you know what? We do have another idea, this thing that we're working on. Did you see Alien? Are you a fan of Alien? And he just stopped. And it's like his dreams like flashed before his eyes and said, we're doing the sequel. And so he didn't at the time, because he was doing Terminator, but Arnold had to go do Conan 2, so they had to wait for him. So he didn't have time to direct, but he had time to write. And he wrote a script that was so good that they were like, this is so good. If your Terminator turns out well, you can direct this movie.
Oh, wow.
And so it's the talent of his writing that really got him in the door with that. And then Terminator became Terminator, so then he was on board to direct it.
It's a great script. It's maybe one of my favorite action movie scripts ever. And the thing that I most want to emulate from this script in my own writing and have not succeeded yet is how quickly he establishes who all the people are in one or two lines. The early scenes on the Sulaco, when the Marines are waking up and they're before they know what the mission is, while they're figuring that out, we get one line from almost all of the important Marines. where they're bantering with each other, whatever, they're eating breakfast, they're hanging out. And in those brief moments, we know who everyone is. Like, it is the fastest characterization I have ever seen in a movie. And his ability to do that, to say, this guy's going to make one joke line and you're going to know exactly what kind of personality he is, how he fits in with the rest of the crew, what they all think of him, what he thinks of them in a line of dialogue is astonishing characterization. And he'd only written like 1 or 2 scripts before this. So it's not like this is the product of years and years of practice and training. This is just how this guy naturally writes. Very envious of it.
Well, was he writing before? I mean, he had 2 scripts that got produced, but was he writing before that, like developing his craft, or did he just literally write 2 scripts? Or
I don't know how much he had written before that. I don't know. I mean, he was mostly on the physical production side. When he started working, it was almost exclusively like on like set deck and art design and model making. He was a model maker.
Yeah.
He was on the physical production side.
I feel like I remember in his book that he was always writing, when he was coming up, because he wanted to be a filmmaker, and he actually did a student film that had the exoskeleton loader.
I've seen
the film.
I've seen his little student movie. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it's somebody, but again, like how we talked about Carl Weathers being touched by the gods physically, like the duality of James Cameron, which we talk a lot about in this podcast, like he was touched by the gods intellectually. He has both sides of his brain on genius level. And, they talk about him that when there's a little bit of downtime as a director, he kind of wanders into the model shop. And before he leaves, he's like developed like the 4 new looks of ships or whatever. Then he wanders into the art shop and he can do anything. If you could clone an army of James Camerons, like, think of what they could accomplish.
And what's funny about that, so let's talk about Cameron a little bit, because he's not an uncontroversial figure. He's clearly a guy who has a hard time being married. I think he's been married like 4 or 5 times at this point. Some very high profile divorces. And there's been a number of people who have said that he's hard to work with, that he's very aggressive, that he's very demanding. And I'm a person, I don't believe you have to be aggressive to be good at making films. I mean, Narain Shankar's an amazing showrunner. He's the least aggressive guy on the planet. He just makes it clear what he wants done. He's very helpful to people, and he has high expectations, and he expects you to meet those expectations, but he never yells at anybody, right? So I got to hang out with a guy. It was on a different show, but he was, before anybody knew what Avatar was, he was the sort of the designer for Avatar. And he told me, he's like, yeah, I'm working on this secret project with James Cameron, and we're developing this like whole world. And I was very curious about it because, of course, I'm a big James Cameron fan. And he didn't, he wasn't giving out any secrets, but he kind of was like, yeah, it's a whole world that we have to create from the ground up, and and Cameron's very involved in that, and he really wants to be part of the design of everything and make sure it all has like a really cohesive language to the design of everything. And of course, what he made that after that was Avatar, so you understand what he was trying to accomplish. But I remember talking to him about that and saying, like, I hear he's really hard to work with, and this guy said, it's like, no, he's demanding, but he's as demanding of himself as he is of everybody else. And the minute that he sees that you care as much about the project as he does, and you're willing to put in the effort that he's willing to put in on the project, he loves you, treats you like family. So he told me this story that he was trying to get a design done. He's in the office, he's trying to get a design done, and he wound up staying until like 2 or 3 in the morning, just because when you get in that flow and you don't want to break the flow, so you're just trying to get it done. He's there at like 3 in the morning. Nobody else is there. All the lights are out, and he sees the lights start coming on. And he's like, "Oh, is it like janitorial coming in to clean up or whatever?" And it was Cameron. He had come in, and he's like, he had thought of something at home and was like, "Shit, I need to go to the office and do this one thing." So he came in, and he sees, and this guy's name was Robert. He sees Robert there, and he goes, "Hey, what are you doing here, man?" He's like, "Oh, I was working on this thing. I really wanted to get it done. I didn't want to stop in the middle because I didn't feel like I was going to get the flow back, and I just really wanted to finish it." And he said, and Cameron's like, "Hey, well, thanks, man. I really appreciate that you're doing that." And he came and he looked at it. And he's like, "Yeah, it's great." And then he left. He said, from then on, Cameron treated him like he was made out of gold.
Oh.
And he's like, it's just that moment where he realized, oh, this guy cares. He cares as much about the project as I do, cares about doing something really fun and interesting and making something good. And so now he's family. And so the thing I took away from that is if you had a hard time with Cameron, it's because he thought you were lazy.
Yeah.
It's because he thought you didn't care as much as he did. And that's why you had a hard time with him.
To illustrate that point, on this movie, they had a thing called the Tea Time Mutiny. So Cameron was at Pinewood, and at Pinewood, he's used to hiring all of his own crew. But if you go work in Pinewood, they have a crew that comes with Pinewood. And so he shows up, and he's at Pinewood, and he has this crew. Well, that crew stays with Pinewood and does movie after movie at Pinewood. So they're a lot of locals. They look at it like going to work at the mill, and then they want to be, off at 5, go to the pub. And they didn't care very much about the movie that they were making, according to Cameron and crew, that Cameron's crew. And Cameron could not just believe that. And so I feel that when he is working on a film, it is the most important thing to him. And he wants to create something that is important, that is going to move something forward. He invents things to make this movie. And if you're on that movie and you don't have that passion and that love, like you were creating something, if you're just showing up to do your job and half-ass your job, he doesn't want anything. He doesn't want that. He wants that out of his atmosphere, because what he's doing is, he wants to make something great. And so he ended up not getting along with the AD, so he fired the AD, and the AD kind of riled up the crew. And at tea time, they all left. Everybody put their things down and they left. And it was hard for Cameron and Gail Ann Hurd, because there was a lot of movies shooting in England at the time, so they kind of needed that crew. So Cameron brought him back and said, listen, this is really important to me. It's my first studio movie. This is kind of the work ethic that I have. And, if you guys are going to work against me and work against what it is I'm trying to accomplish, you got to step forward and I'll replace you, because I can't have that. And then they vented their things about working hours and everything. So they tried to meet each other halfway, and he did not like the experience. And when he finished the film, he gathered everybody around, and everybody probably thought they were giving I was hard, but we finished it and we came through, and we're all, all for one and one for all. We're all a team. And he said, it was really hard, and we all came together, and it was a tricky shoot. We made it work, but I get to walk out of this motherfucker, and you guys got to stay here, and I'll never see you again. Then he left. Because he was like, fuck that. But, one thing that Cameron is too, all these other things that you hear and, difficult to work with and everything, but he's also, to further your point you were making earlier, he's also incredibly loyal. He's also, if you look at the cast of this movie, so even in the beginning with Gail Ann Hurd, 20th Century Fox did not want her. They just did Terminator together, and they didn't believe in her as a producer. And so he was like, well, I'm not.
I think she proved them wrong.
I think, yes. I think
Gail Ann Hurd got the last laugh on that one.
That might have been the biggest miscalculation of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, and he was like, no. You don't understand how great this woman is. And basically, Terminator is Terminator in large part because of her efforts. Yeah. So he stayed behind her, and 20th Century Fox were really want to be involved in casting, but no, he got Lance, he got Chet, he got from Terminator, what's his name? Michael Biehn. He got all his, his friends and his people, and Vasquez. What's her real name? Vasquez.
Oh, Jeanette Goldstein.
And watching this movie, it made me realize we have to do Near Dark soon. Okay, because half the cast of Near Dark is in this movie, and we got to have Buellman on to do it.
Yeah, I would say that you're right. That them not understanding what Gail Ann Hurd was at this point in her career and trying to get rid of her may count up there among the greatest blunders ever made by a studio.
Second is when all the teams that passed on Tom Brady during the NFL draft.
Right. Yeah. And I let's talk about Gail Ann Hurd for a minute, because of course, it's easy to talk about actors and writers and directors, but most people don't talk about producers. And for a lot of producer is the most useless title in Hollywood, because they give it to everybody. And It can mean you're somebody who put money in. It can mean that you're an actor with a little pull, so they give you a producer title just to keep you happy. It can mean that you're a writer on it. It can mean that you're a visual effects producer, but they bump you up to regular producer to make you happy. It's a title that they give to everybody, so people don't understand what it means. But for an actual producer, a feature movie producer like Gale Anne Hurd, you are like the CEO of the production, right? It's such an important job. You have such important decision-making power within the production. Everybody works for you. I mean, except for the director, but the crew all works for you. Everything behind the scenes is under your purview. And if you don't know how to run that machine like a CEO, the production just grinds to a halt. It just falls apart. So being a great boss who knows what you need when you need it, who understands the vision of the director, because of course your partner is the director. You have to understand their vision and try to get the pieces necessary to build that. The ability to do that is not common. There's a lot of people who call themselves producers who could not do that job. And so the talent level that she has for that obviously has been demonstrated. She now runs one of the largest production companies in Hollywood, Valhalla Entertainment, which is gigantic, which has produced some of the biggest shows and movies and stuff.
Wait, Valhalla?
Yeah, she runs Valhalla. That's her company.
Weren't we just talking about going to Valhalla?
Yes. Yeah. What I was building up to is, so I did a favor for Valhalla. They reached out to me. They wanted to get in touch with somebody that I knew that I worked with, and like, hey, can you arrange for us to have a meeting with this person? We'd really appreciate it. And I was like, yeah, no problem. Happy to do it. And they said, and it was for Gale. I wasn't talking to her, but I was talking to her like her assistant or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, Gale wanted to know if there's anything that Valhalla can do for you. Do you want movies? Do you want posters? Is there any of that kind of stuff? I said, can I get a poster signed by Gale Anne Hurd? And they were like, yeah, no problem. So I have a poster. And the only person I wanted to sign it was Gale Anne Hurd.
Wait, what poster?
I'm such a fan of hers.
What poster?
It's one of the original classic Walking Dead posters, because Valhalla made Walking Dead.
Why don't you should have that on your background?
I will. I'm just starting to set up the office here. I haven't framed
that
it
is
yet.
really cool. I mean, you think about the movies that Gale Anne Hurd's been a part of and the things that she's done. And she is one of those producers. You know, the cutting out Ripley's backstory with her daughter and the time and all that. Yeah. That was all Gale Anne Hurd. James Cameron resisted that. But basically, she said, this is the cleanest cut, because if we nibble and take out all the other, because they were almost at 3 hours, right? Yeah. And so basically, if they took out that one thing, that was 30 minutes. And if they took out that, then it's 2 hours and 17 minutes, and they can justify the 17 minutes because the studio wanted it 2 hours. So she was like, this is the cleanest cut that we can make without nibbling the movie to death. Right. And I just watched that version of it, and I think I do. Well, I like it better as a cinema experience. The reason I like the other cut is just because I'm so fascinated with I can spend all the time in the world with this world. Yeah, and these characters.
They could do a 9-hour cut and we'd still watch it.
Exactly. I watched a 3 hour and change making of the movie.
Yeah.
I was watching the movie, and sometimes, like, if there's a movie like that and there's just so many set pieces and so many great parts, I want to write them down so then to make sure that we mention them. But I was like, I don't need to write shit down. Ty knows this movie like the back of Breck's ass. So I don't need to write shit down.
I know this movie like I know Joseph's tramp stamp.
So talk about the opening visual.
Well, I mean, the movie starts where Alien leaves off. You know, the end of Alien is Ripley in the sleeping pod on the ship, drifting through space. And when we pick up with Aliens, it is a direct pickup. It is the ship drifting through space. You know, we come inside, we see Ripley in the pod with Jones, the cat, and they imply a lot of time has passed because the pod is covered with like fine little bits of ice, like snow has covered the pod. And then you see something start cutting through the door in. And because like the first time I saw this at the theater when I was like, I don't know how old I was when this movie came out.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about the first time we saw it.
Yeah, I was a teenager because I went and saw it with my best friend at the time, Ed, So Ed and I snuck out.
Shout out to Ed.
Ed, yep. Ed was staying at my house for like a couple of days. We snuck out, walked to the theater, which was like 2 miles away or 3 miles away.
Wait, you snuck out at night?
Well, no, I mean, we were like, hey, we're going to go out and run around on the golf course. And then we just left for like 3 hours. Right. Went over to the theater. And a friend of the family's, there was some friends of our family that were at our house, and their kid, who was like maybe 11 or 12, that we were forced to take him with us everywhere we went. So he came with us. So he took this like 11-year-old to the Wait, and by the way, that kid's of course a grown man now, but he still talks about that. He still talks about going to aliens.
Oh, I thought you were about to say, by the way, that kid went to a mental hospital. He's never the same.
Well, yeah. So the three of us walked up to this.
Did you trust that kid not to rat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we made it clear that Ed and I would beat him into a pile of Jello if he ratted.
Okay, all right.
No, but actually, the kid was cool. He was like, "Yeah, I want to see it too." He was down, right?
Okay, good. Was his family in the cult?
Yes, everybody we knew was in the cult at that point.
Yeah, poor feller, poor.
So we snuck over there. We watched the movie, and I remember I had seen Alien multiple times at that point. Right, it was a movie I had seen with my, I snuck down to my friend and watched it on HBO, that kind of stuff. And I remember the feeling I got when that first scene comes up and you see the ship. And none of us, this was back in the days before the internet. So nope, there was no like rewatching the trailer 1,000 times on YouTube and a million, there was like magazines. There was like magazines about upcoming movies. But if you didn't read those magazines, you didn't know what was in the movie, right? You didn't know anything. So we're sitting there. I hadn't read anything. So all I knew was Alien. We're sitting there. That door starts, all of a sudden that thing starts cutting through the door, right? And you just see it going around and it's cutting through and you're like, oh man, what the fuck? What's happening? Like, are they coming after Ripley? And then when the door falls in and there's all that smoke and that dark shadowy shape moves through the smoke, it looks like an alien. You're like, oh my God, do the aliens have blowtorches? Are they breaking, as an alien breaking into the ship to get her?
But that first thing comes in that takes an image, that machine comes.
Well, but that's the thing I'm talking about. So the thing that comes in is when you see it in the smoke, it's long. It's got that long, like a head. And you're like, oh shit, is that an alien? And then it comes through the smoke and it does that like laser sweep of the room. And you don't know what any of this means. Like if you've seen Alien, you've never seen anything like that before, right?
Yeah.
You're just
what would you do?
What the fuck is happening?
What would little Ty do if the alien she threw out the airlock like finally caught up to the spaceship 15 years later, cut the thing open and then stabbed her in her sleeping chamber, and then it was like the end, roll credits.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Alien 3 did that exact scene, and that's why that movie sucks.
Okay, go ahead.
But anyway, at that moment, the movie is signaling to you, you are not going to know what's happening before it happens. Strap yourself in. You're going to be here. It's a ride. And from that moment on, my tension level went through the roof. I was on the edge of my seat for the rest of the movie because that opening scene is and nobody explains anything. There's no like text crawl going, it is 57 years later. Ellen Ripley is still on the drift. Now she has been caught up to by scavengers who are scavenging her ship. None of that. It's all just told visually.
Yeah.
And then the guys come in and you're like, who the fuck are these guys? What's going on? And then the guy pulls his hat off and he's like, well, there goes our salvage rights, boys. And that's the only line you get to explain what just happened.
Yeah.
And that is masterful visual storytelling. Right. Masterful visual story. From that point on, I was in. I was like, no matter what this movie does now, I am down for the ride.
Watching this movie, one thing, Ripley's one of my favorite characters. I love, but I forgot how good she is in this movie.
Oh,
I think this is probably her best performance that I can think of off the top of my head right now that I've ever seen. And this is like a great model of what a hero is, And I think James Cameron, when he saw the first Alien, he was as blown away as we were about it. And he's a big design freak, so the design of Alien was like blew his mind. It really impressed him, and he's hard to impress. But also, James Cameron was pro strong female characters before strong female characters were cool, and he until Hollywood thought it was cool. and he so he wrote this entire script based off of her. She's almost in every scene.
Yeah.
And he realized, like, when he finished it, wait, did anybody talk to Sigourney? Like, did we have her? And they were like, no, she had no idea, and she wasn't like locked down. So he had to call her.
Yeah.
And he called, and she was dubious at first. She was like, what do you got? Because now she's like, she's right. You know, she did.
Well, now she's Sigourney Weaver.
Now she's Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah.
So she was a bit dubious at first. So he sat down and talked to her, and she said, I want these three things. I don't want to use guns. I want to die in the movie, and I want to make love to the alien. And and Cameron was like, no to all of those. And then you're going to do this. But Cameron reframed the way he saw the picture after talking to her, because he thought the motivation for her would be revenge. This is they killed my crow and I go wipe him out. But he reframed it and rewrote it in the sense of, like, she would be hesitant to go. Yeah. But if she can go and keep other people from going through that thing, then that's what would make her go. And that was a great adjustment.
Yeah, her motivation is very believable. When Burke and Lieutenant Gorman come to meet with her and try to convince her to go, and she's like, "Fuck no." Like, why would I do that? That's insane. Yeah, you're like, yeah, of course. Why? That is what any rational person would say.
Yeah, I'm out. Like, the whole time, I'm like, yeah, sorry, Colony 157. I am not fucking going through that shit again. You know, yeah. Hell no. I'm staying here with my cat. And I'm going to drive my loader.
Exactly. Like, I've got a cat. I've got a loader. My life is good. I've got this little coffee maker.
Yeah.
But she says the things that an audience is thinking, because she says, I'm not a soldier.
Right.
I'm not, like, I don't know how to fight. So, and we're sitting there going, oh yeah, that's right. She's not a soldier. She's a spaceship navigator. She's a pilot, right? So the idea that she would go back with a bunch of Marines and fight some aliens, we're thinking doesn't make any sense. And she's thinking the same thing. She's like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would I do that?
Coincidentally, all the three out there things that she wanted, she did it in one of the other alien movies that we won't discuss. We don't count. That's not a real movie. All of those things she did. She fucked an alien. she died, and she didn't touch a gun.
And it's not a good movie.
Not a good movie.
Not a good movie.
But
now, I would say in this movie, to be fair, she does fuck multiple aliens.
What do you mean?
As in, she fucks them up.
Yeah, she fucks them up.
Yeah.
But again, you know, she's so great in this, because the things that she does, the strength that she has, the will, the resourcefulness, but it all comes from love and caring for other people. The motherly instinct she has for the little girl, the strength that she holds the crew and everybody together. And there's something like, and I think she got nominated for an Oscar for this. Is that right, Joseph? If I'm not mistaken. And because what she pulls off in this it's one of my favorite action heroes of all time. And I more so than the first movie. And I love the first movie's like sacred ground to me.
Okay, so they're different genres though. So the first movie is sci-fi horror. Aliens is sci-fi action. It switches genres.
Right.
So and she's not an action hero in the first movie. She is the classic person trapped in a haunted house with a monster, right? That's what the first movie is. And she's just trying to live. She's just trying to get away. In this movie, she switches gears to, I can't just get away. I got to save somebody. And then she goes badass.
But even badass, it's like, it's not like Rambo badass.
No.
It's like, you know, I will survive badass.
She's the classic survivor.
Yeah.
And I know why you like her, because she's the kind of action hero you like. She's scrappy. She's
and
tough.
Grounded and realistic.
She's thinking about what she needs to do. She's not counting on her roided out muscles to save her. She's like, I got to think my way through this. I got to be smart. And Cameron does a good job of showing us that side of her early, so that when we get to those scenes later, it feels, you know, that we should go through the whole movie, but there's a scene where one of the characters has one of the Marine assault rifles, and she says, "Show me how it works."
Yes. Yeah.
And he starts showing it to her, and he's like, "Well, you don't want to mess with the grenade launcher." She's like, "No, show me everything."
Yeah.
Because she's smart and she's thoughtful, and she's like, if at some point I'm required to use one of these to defend myself, I want to know how the fucking thing works. I don't want to do figuring it out in the moment, right?
And she's the one that's completely underestimated by her when she tries to give the briefing. And Cameron says that he had a vision that kind of helped guide the movie, and he said he saw it as the Alamo, and Sigourney Weaver was John Wayne in the thing. And but what's interesting is when you first meet the soldiers, there is a Vietnam feel to it, and this is in the 80s, and it still has like kind of that flavor of the Vietnam. But it also is like the pride comes before the fall. Like there's a pridefulness in the soldiers, and she's trying to give them a briefing, and they don't even want to fucking hear it. They're like, just show me where.
These aren't even soldiers. These are Marines.
Yeah.
And there's nobody more arrogant about how badass they are than Marines.
You remember Vasquez was like, just show me where they are. Like points the finger, like, don't give me, like they're rolling their eyes as she's trying to. So she's completely underestimated. And when she, and I don't want to jump ahead of the movie, but when shit starts going down, her superpower is her ability to think during the storm.
Yeah.
And the care that she has for others. Yeah. Keep her wits and willing to risk her life to help others. And all these badass soldiers were like, we paying attention? We just got our asses kicked, man.
Yeah. And Cameron, if you read the behind the scenes stuff, one of the things Cameron did, and what I read he likes to do, is if he's going to be writing about a certain culture, he likes to go spend time with that culture and just listen and just hang out and listen. And so he spent some time with a Marine unit and just listened to them talk to each other. When they were in the chow hall, what kind of banter did they have? How did they talk to each other? When they were in briefings, how did the lieutenants and platoon leaders talk to their unit, and how did the unit respond to that? And I think a lot of that verisimilitude that comes through in the movie comes from that. He was listening to these guys, and he was writing down a version of how they talk to each other for all of these characters. And so when you're watching them interact with each other, it just feels so real. And I think that's because it is real. I'm willing to bet Cameron heard a Marine say, the only thing I need to know about the enemy is where they are. I'm sure he heard somebody say that. I was like, that's a good line. I'm giving that to somebody, right? That sounds very Marine-like. It sounds like one of their lines.
No, I know you're, I have not read this book. I know that you're a fan of the Starship Troopers book.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like Starship Trooper-ish stuff in this.
Yeah.
Did this book come out before? Did the book come out before the movie?
Oh yeah. Starship Troopers came out in the 50s.
So was this like an homage to it,
anybody who does military sci-fi, anybody since the 50s is borrowing from Heinlein. Starship Troopers was one of the most important sci-fi books of that period, and it's flavored everything that's followed. I mean, so Starship Troopers was the World War II version of that. Joe Haldeman, another great, fantastic science fiction writer, I actually think he's one of the best ever. He wrote The Forever War, and The Forever War was Starship Troopers set in Vietnam. So even he will admit. One of my favorite moments that I had, I was at a bar with Joe Haldeman and his wife Gay, and we're hanging out. And I just said, "Hey Joe," and it was the first time I had ever hung out with Joe Haldeman. I said, "Hey Joe, I just want you to know." It was after Leviathan Wakes got nominated for a Hugo, so everybody knew who I was at that point. So I was like, "Hey Joe, I just want you to know I'm really grateful to you for allowing me to steal all of your good ideas for my book." And he was taken aback by that. He was like, "What?" And then Gay leans over. She put her hand on my head. She goes, "Don't worry, honey. He stole everything from Heinlein." So we've all been borrowing from Heinlein. Everybody who has
he was a veteran, though, right? Joe Haldeman was
Heinlein was a veteran.
Yeah,
and Joe Haldeman was too. Joe Haldeman was in Vietnam.
Yeah.
So all of us have been borrowing bits and pieces from Heinlein, and sometimes we're borrowing as an homage, and sometimes we're borrowing to critique because I don't agree with all of Heinlein's positions in his books. And sometimes you're borrowing things he did to sort of do a rebuttal to that thing. And I think all of us have been doing that ever since. And I think Cameron, of course, you think he read a lot of sci-fi as a kid, and I'm sure he read Starship Troopers, and I'm sure that the platoon in Aliens is colored by that Starship Troopers experience.
He wrote one of the things that they talk about in the making of it that I think is hilarious. I guess this was like a bug squashing unit, like a bug smashing unit, you know? So if that is the case, so
is this a stand-up fight, sir, or another bug hunt?
If that is the case, are there other life forms in the alien universe?
They certainly imply that there are.
Okay,
and because when in the beginning, and we should go through the movie sort of and lay it out.
Well, you went through the meeting them all, so go from there.
After Ripley gets woken up, and she gives a debrief to the heads of the company that her ship was owned by, and they're asking her what happened and why the ship blew up and all that stuff, and you can tell that they're looking to blame it on her. But in that meeting, when she talks about the fact that they found a xenomorph, an alien life form, nobody seems shocked by that. And in fact, one of them says, in over 100 surveyed worlds, we've never seen a creature like this, which implies that they've seen other creatures. They've been to other planets that have other kinds of creatures, but they've never seen one that gestates inside a living human host. And these are your words, has concentrated acid for blood. Yeah. So the shocking thing to them is not that alien life exists. They're not shocked by that.
Right. But there was some artwork on their craft, like a World War II plane, and it was called the Bug Smashers, and it's like an eagle that's coming down and smashing bugs, and it says we endanger species everywhere. and he said that in the movie, or like the day, it was too small to really make out, which they were all bummed with because they had jackets made like we endanger species everywhere. But I think that was cool.
Well, and that's another thing where the verisimilitude that he brings to it is soldiers write on stuff. I mean, even back to World War I and World War II, you got airmen writing on bombs. Like, take this, Hitler, and here's one from USA and that kind of stuff.
Right up your ass, Hitler,
Yeah, and people will write on their guns and they'll write on their armor and that kind of stuff. You watch video of Vietnam and people have written stuff on their helmets.
Yeah.
So it's a very common thing. So
Private Joker had Born to Kill and
Born to Kill and the peace sign. Yeah.
It's irony, sir. What?
Got the duality of man. But so they had a lot of that kind of stuff. My personal favorite is the pilot on her helmet. It says, "I fly the unfriendly skies."
Yeah.
I think the idea is that the colonists, they've got all these worlds that they've landed colonists on, and some of those worlds already had stuff on them. And so it seems like the colonial marines, one of their jobs is to go to these worlds and keep colonists from getting killed by whatever the indigenous life form is. So we get the scene with her doing the debrief, and then it's clear that they've scapegoated her, right? That the company, is blaming her for the loss of the spaceship, and they think her story's bullshit. So now we cut to, she's a deeply traumatized person. She's clearly got PTSD. She's been having flashback dreams of alien stuff. And one of the company executives, Carter Burke, played by Paul Reiser, very out of character for everybody, knew him from Mad About You. And then here he comes playing this slimy corporate executive. And
I'm reverse. I could never get Carter. I could never watch Mad About You because I'm like, that's Carter Burke. He's a fucking
he's up to no good. He's
up to I don't trust that son of a bitch as far as I could throw him.
But again, it's another example of the classic that comedians are great in dramatic roles.
Yeah,
like you get a good comedian, they're almost always great in dramas. But then we get the scene of Carter Burke showing up at Ripley's apartment with a Marine lieutenant, Lieutenant Gorman, and them telling her that LV-426, the planet where they picked up the alien egg, there've been colonists living there, and now they've lost contact with the colony, and they're worried that the thing that she described might be involved in that. And they want her to come as an advisor with the Marine platoon that's going there in case they run into one of those things. And, we started out talking about this. She's like, no, fuck you. I'm not going back. Why would I do that? I'm not a soldier. I'm not going to go fight. And then we get the scene, because we, very early in the movie, we get a scene where she wakes up from a terrible nightmare where she has an alien bursting out of her chest. We get a scene now of her sitting up, bolt upright in bed, covered in sweat, panting. And we know the dream. We didn't have to see it again. We know what dream she just had, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then she calls Carter and she goes, are we going there? If we find them, are we going there to wipe them out? And he says, yeah, that's the plan. And she's like, all right, I'll go. So this is such economy of storytelling, because what we understand as an audience is this is her way of purging herself of these dreams, of finally getting past what happened to her, is to go there, watch the aliens be destroyed, and then maybe she'll be able to sleep after that, which is interesting because the last image of the movie it's the cap of that story.
Right. But also, too, what happened to her is so horrible. These things are so horrible. The thought of women and children being involved in that, either they're going to go there and can save some lives, but even if everybody's wiped out, they're going to kill all of these things, so they'll never find their way back to Earth,
Yeah, and that is certainly implied in an earlier scene, in the boardroom scene, where the head of the core company is like, there have been colonists living on LV-426 for decades, and you hear Ripley under her breath say families.
Yes.
And she's thinking that exact thing.
Yeah.
She's thinking there's families with kids. They're going to be running into these things. So we know that's on her mind. We know that she's thinking about that.
So let me ask you a question. Is there any way that Carter Burke, before they leave on the mission, starts to believe her story?
They absolutely imply that Burke did believe her. He did think this thing was true. And what he saw was the company profits that could be made from weaponizing this thing. And he's going there to get one. That's why he's going.
Okay. So it wasn't like a reaction to once they get there and he sees it, then he pivots. He was going, do they, because again, that goes to economy of storytelling, because it was clear to me that was what happened, but watching it the second time, I don't remember having a moment, like in a studio film, the studio note would be like, a voiceover. And in that moment, I knew I was going to get me a xenomorph or ectomorph or whatever.
Or a stupid scene where he's like sending somebody an email going, I'm going to go get one of these xenomorphs.
Yeah.
Like something
like that.
And
we're going to make billions.
We'll make billions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you gotta give it to Paul Reiser for his ambition. I mean, he fucking the balls on that guy to go out and get him an alien that has acid for blood, but the shit he does in the film, I'm like, this motherfucker is a little ambitious.
But Wes, I don't know which species is worse. You don't see them fucking each other over for a goddamn percentage point.
I can't wait. I know you got a treasure chest. Treasure chest.
So then we get the classic, ripped off so many times since this movie, scene of the platoon coming together, because she agrees to go. We cut to the Sulaco, which is the Marine ship, and the pods opening up and the Marines waking up, and we get the scene you're talking about where Apone throws the cigar in his mouth the minute the pod opens. We get this scene. We immediately know who. Wow, his name just flew out of my head.
Bill Paxton.
Yeah, Bill Paxton. What's his character's name?
Hudson.
Thank you. We immediately know who Hudson is, because he's like, yeah, these floors are cold. You want me to fetch the slippers for you? Would you, Sarge? That'd be great.
Yeah,
look into my eye. Yeah. But we get this great scene because there's a bunch of people to meet. There's a lot of characters in this platoon. And very quickly, we learn the important characters, right? We meet the Lieutenant Gorman. She has breakfast with him. We meet Burke. We meet the Lance Henriksen character, the android, who's there hanging out with the officer and her. And we get Ripley's reaction to an android when she sees the clear milky blood, because of course we remember the trauma she had, because the last android she hung out with tried to kill her. And they acknowledge that in the movie, you know, like, oh yeah, it was the android went crazy and a few deaths were involved, and then the Lance Henriksen character going, oh, I'm shocked. We can't do that now. We never hurt anybody. We get to meet all them, but then we also get to meet all of the members of the platoon, the grunts, to use Paul Reiser's term. And so quickly we understand the interactions between these people. We get the fantastic opening scene with Vasquez, everybody's favorite character in this movie. You know, Vasquez when she's doing the pull-ups, and Hudson comes over and is like, hey, Vasquez, you ever been mistaken for a man? No. Have you? Have you? Oh, Vasquez, you're just too bad. And the Drake character, you know, who like gives her the fist bump and then she slaps him in the face, and we understand their interaction. Like immediately we understand that Vasquez and Drake are good buddies. Maybe they're fucking right. Like you get that interaction immediately. You get
they both carry the saw.
They carry the saw, the two saw gunners.
Yeah.
And then we get the scene with Drake and Hudson in the chow hall when he holds his hand down and makes makes the android do the knife trick
thing.
And you hear them talking to each other, you know, there's just the banter between them, you know, like, what is this shit supposed to be? I think it's cornbread. It's good for you, boy. Eat it. And like just the banter between them all, like very quickly, two things happen. One, we like them. Like very quickly, we like these guys. And I'm using the guys non-gendered because there's also plenty of female Marines as well. But it's just the group of them we like, right? And we like their interactions with each other. They're funny. They're like, they seem hyper confident, you know, like there's a lot of testosterone in that room. And I'm talking about the women too. You know, I mean, there's like, it's an aggressive group of people that are extremely confident and funny. And we want them to succeed, which we need to. Yeah. We need to want them to succeed so that the stuff that happens later in the movie has impact.
They think Lieutenant's got to stick up his ass because he doesn't sit with them.
Lieutenant's got to stick up his ass because every grunt thinks the lieutenant has to stick up his ass. That's is
the way, because they usually do. And then you have Sigourney Weaver as the outsider in the group,
right?
You know, who's not a soldier, who's not a part of that thing, and gosh, I think her tank top and panties is like as iconic as the xenomorph. Like it's
from Alien when she's trying to climb in the space
in this one and Alien, like that image of her in space, it's as iconic as anything else to do with Alien.
Yeah, and we see that she's kind of regretting agreeing to do this. It's never said, but you see it on her face when the Marines are joking about, you know, getting some juicy colonist daughters and we got to rescue them from their virginity, but they're not taking it seriously. And you see on her face that she's like, oh shit, I may have fucked up coming with these guys. They're not taking it seriously. I don't know who needs to be rescued more, you know, like are the Marines going to be a bigger threat to these colonists than the monsters are? And then you get that briefing scene, you know, where she's briefing them on her experience with the alien, and they're all kind of ignoring it. Now, the cool thing about watching this movie multiple times, and you can pay attention to different characters, is in the scene with the briefing, Cameron's using a lot of tricks to pull your attention away to different people. Hudson's being really funny in there, right? Like, I got a question, sir. How to get out of this chicken shit outfit? You throw that shit, Hudson. And you know, Vasquez, you talk about the line where Vasquez is like, I only need to know one thing, where they are. And they're all high-fiving each other. But when Ripley's doing her debriefing, the one person that's paying a lot of attention is Hicks. Hicks never makes a joke. He's watching her very carefully. And it's clear that he's taking her story seriously and wants to be prepared. And so then when Lieutenant says, anyway, we've got her report on file, I suggest you all study it. I have a feeling the only person who actually studied that file was Hicks. Yeah. I think Hicks went and studied.
Yeah. And also us knowing what they're going up against and then being like, they're kind of like, we're Marines, baby. Like we got this. Oh, don't worry. We got a lot of firepower. We got everything. And the whole time you're like, you don't even fucking know, man. Nope. These things are crazy.
Yeah, but also it's also great characterization in that moment because later we see how much respect Hicks has from the other Marines. And we understand why. He's serious. He's thoughtful.
Yeah.
He's the guy who pays attention and understands what's going on. And when the shit goes down and Hicks starts telling people what to do, they just do it. Because they're like, if Hicks probably knows what's going on, we should do what he said. So setting him up as the guy who pays attention in the briefing is really good characterization for the stuff that happens later. Then we go in the dropship. Another fantastic one important bit of characterization. We learn that Ripley has a fair amount of skill in one of the power loaders. Now, we've heard earlier, this was set up earlier, where Burke says, I heard you're working on the docks driving loaders. And she says, she says, yeah. And he's like, it's the job you could get. And she's like, yeah, that's the job I have. Then we see on the ship, is there anything I can do? And Apone's like, well, is there anything you can do? He's like, well, I could drive one of those loaders. I've got a class 2 license. And then we see her do it. We see her get in the loader, start it up, pick up a box, and then say, where do you want it? And she does it very smoothly. And it's clear that she has a lot of experience operating one of these, which will be important later. So this is an important moment, getting to see her do that.
And a great lesson for somebody watching this, and like everything in this movie was set up, but it was set up properly. It wasn't shoehorned in. So when Burke is saying, you work at a dock. Oh, what? The dock with the loader. He's insulting her. He wasn't inserting exposition for exposition's sake. He was trying to get her to do something. He wanted something from her. So he used that exposition in the scene to motivate her in a direction.
Yeah, because he's saying, I can get your flight status reinstated. You can be a navigator on a ship again, which clearly in this world is a high status job. And he's saying, you've got a shitty low status job right now. You're basically a fucking dock worker. I can get you back on ships. So he's insulting her current job, as you said, to motivate her to get her old job back, to get her to do what he wants her to do. But that piece of information is incredibly important later. It's fantastic character development, character building.
And I'll tell you, again, like everything comes from character and is motivated through character. But I tell you, if I could drive the exoskeleton all day at the docks, that'd probably be my dream job.
Cool, right?
yeah, that'd be fucking cool.
But I mean, you think about it, in their world, it's the equivalent of a forklift operator job, which is not a terrible job. I've driven forklifts. I mean, that's not a terrible job. I'm not insulting forklift operators. But the exoskeleton's
a lot more fun.
Right, but I'm sure to a person who's never seen a forklift would seem like that.
Forklifts are kind of fun.
I'm sure in the alien world, they don't see the exoskeleton loaders that way. It's just like, it's just a fucking forklift, right?
Right.
But anyway, so then we get the drop, which is a classic sequence because it is, again, this is all character building for the Marines. Because you got Hudson, he's doing, we get the idea that he's sort of the technical guy because he's like locking everybody in and he's making sure all the technical stuff is done.
Yeah.
We get the scene with Vasquez and Lieutenant Gorman where she's asking him, how many drops have you done? And we realize how green he is.
Yeah.
That he's done 38 simulated drops, but this is only his second actual drop.
Counting this one.
And then we get the great scene where you look over and Hicks is asleep. He's like asleep on the thing's shaking around.
Somebody wake Hicks up.
Somebody wake up Hicks. Yeah. So we get even more character development and character building in this scene that feels very organic. It feels like you said, it never feels like, oh, this is the writer inserting some info dumping into the scene for me. It all just feels like it's part of the thing.
What is the movie that is a bad version of this? And all I remember is the guy's like, this is Katana. Don't get killed by her. She can cut you 5 ways.
That terrible Suicide Squad movie. It's so bad.
If you want to see a bad version of this scene,
that's exactly what that is. That is the terrible version of this scene.
It is a terrible version. It's so general and on the nose and specific. But don't get killed by her.
Let me explain every character to you as we're flying in the helicopter. This is so-and-so. His name is Boomerang because he throws boomerangs. Oh, my God.
And that's Grenade Man. See if you can guess what his weapon is.
Is it grenades? You better believe it's grenades.
You goddamn right it's grenades.
Oh, my God.
And I'm loud talking. Man.
That's so bad. But you're right. You're right. That is the terrible version of this. This is
Right.
if you're a writer, if you're a aspiring writer of screenplays, do not copy Suicide Squad. Copy Aliens. Cameron,
How many times have you read Aliens screenplay?
I think I've only read it once or twice, but it's a great screenplay.
Did you read like the production draft? And is there anything they do different in the?
Oh yeah,
movie?
there's a bunch in the screenplay. I read there's a bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of scenes in there that are not in the movie.
See,
I don't know if they actually shot them and then cut them, or if they just didn't shoot them. Because I mean, with a movie, there's a lot of that stuff that happens where even if it's in the script, the director, who is the absolute boss of what gets filmed, may decide, I don't think this scene is going to make it into the final cut, so I'm not going to waste days on it. I'm not going to waste shooting days shooting it. That's a decision that directors make. So it's possible those scenes were just never even shot.
Because I love watching scripts or reading scripts of movies I love before the movie was made, because I like to see what practicality, what they ended up keeping or changing, or how scenes are a little different, or whatever, like how the movie changed that thing.
And that is great directors. All directors do this to some degree, but the great directors are really good at it, which is you're editing the movie in your head. Like you already know kind of what the movie's going to look like in your head, and you'll get to a scene, you go, you know what? That scene's not going to make it through the edit process. Like we'll shoot it. The first thing the editor's going to do is cut it from the edit, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, I can save 2 days by not shooting it. So you just don't shoot it, right? You just edit it out of the movie before it's even shot. And that happens all the time. Thank
you guys for hanging out on this incredibly long, laborious podcast, but we all love movies here, guys. And Aliens it deserves it. It deserves this attention. It's a relic from the past. It's like the Dead Sea Scrolls. You're not going to skim over the Dead Sea Scrolls. This thing could save your soul.
You got to study it meticulously.
Say goodbye, Ty.
Game over, man. Game over.
Join us for part 2 next week.